Yes.
Are we going to act like
I'm trying
we
to talk
didn't
about.
try to pick the consensus top 5 and you needled me to say, well, that's not our top 5 when I clearly said the guys that we've talked to in the past 3 weeks, that has been the consensus.
Yeah,
Well, I'm just trying to make sure
they
that we
feel a
did
certain
that
way.
they didn't think that
Well,
was.
so when you say
But because
our,
I've asked you for 2 weeks and you haven't hard lined a top 5.
that's because I don't think there is a hardline top 5. I think there's a
You
hardline.
have to start with some sort of a supposition.
I think
though,
there's a
right?
hardline top 3, and then after that, I think it's a free for all.
Okay.
I don't think it's 3 and then 4 and 5 and then a free for all. I think it is top 3 and then jumbled mess. That's the point I wanted to make. I don't think Illinois and Michigan are in a different class, or USC are in a different class than everybody else in the Big Ten.
Do you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, I do. I appreciate that.
I'm covering it up.
Just cover it up.
Because Justin just tried to.
Just get it out of there.
It's childish, JR. It's childish.
I don't think there's a difference between Illinois, Michigan, USC, and the rest of the middle of the pack that we're talking about. That's why I made that distinction.
Okay, which is fine because when I wanted to first do that, I'm not messing with Evan either. He's on text.
Yeah.
This dude.
You can't say Evan's not nice. Like, he's the nicest person.
No, but he's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the reasons where this thing came out yesterday when I called you, and I was like, hey, if the middle of this Big Ten is going to be so dicey, let's start with teams that Nebraska doesn't play as a separator to see if we can kind of forecast.
Because you don't get the head-to-head.
You don't get the head-to-head.
Like, if Nebraska beats Minnesota, we're like, all right, they passed
That's
them.
cool.
They beat Iowa. Okay, they passed them.
Yeah.
But you've got Illinois, Indiana, Washington. They don't play Nebraska. So how do we determine?
Would you agree that those are 3 teams that they're going to have to wade through? Or you're not counting Washington?
Not Washington, because I think they're in a very similar spot as Washington. So I think Washington and Nebraska are starting about at the same level. I think Illinois and Indiana are currently ahead. So Illinois I think Nebraska and Washington are both trying to pass Illinois and Indiana, if that makes sense.
Okay. So we're thinking playoff format, play-in games, get to the top 6, which, by the way, is aggravating because you know how we got here is the reason that I didn't want to get here because what's the one thing that I said about playoff expansion if you do this? I hate AQs. I don't.
Especially when all conferences aren't playing by the same rules.
From day one, I've never liked auto qualifiers unless everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah, playing the same no conference games, whole thing.
Now, if all of a sudden ESPN and the Disney and all that are going to pay for an extra conference, shouldn't even be that way. Pay for a 9th conference game
play for
the
proper
SEC,
amount of conference games. Yeah.
Then we can kind of have that discussion.
Yeah.
But as we've seen other conference commissioners from the ACC and like it's going to be hard to get them on board with the certain number of slots.
Yeah.
Right? And why would you?
Yeah, why would you agree to that?
So anyway, if Nebraska's going to work their way into this top 6, and I get it, it's not a hard top 6. It's kind of mythical because we've only agreed on the top 3 teams.
Yep. I wasn't going to push back this time.
Then this is where you have to start the conversation.
Yeah, I think you have to start it with teams that Nebraska doesn't play that you're going to get into. And you seem to be a little higher on Washington than I am. So I kind of want to start there because you're really high on Williams, their quarterback. Small sample size last year. The numbers are good. The highlights are like the highlights and the kind of the game tape from last year are good as well. I just don't know how comfortable I am extrapolating that. You know, it seems like there was a lot of
you more comfortable with Maava?
No, I'm not comfortable with Maava either. That's why I don't feel good about the people that are putting USC in the top 5. I don't feel good about Maava at all. And maybe it's just I've got too much of last year's, especially first quarter against Nebraska on the brain. But I don't. Maava seems like a weird fit for Lincoln Riley.
So why are you out on Illinois? You just don't think they were very good last year, or are you letting the Vegas win total sway you?
I think the Vegas win total is interesting because Vegas doesn't miss a lot. I kind of learned my lesson from Iowa last year where, like, they had that thing dead on, and I get Iowa still got to the 8.
Well, how about you don't even need to go that far. How about 2 years ago where we thought that they lowballed Nebraska incredibly, and Nebraska didn't get there?
Yeah, what, like 5.5 or 4.5, whatever it was, and Nebraska didn't make it. So, yeah, like I've learned my lesson with Vegas where on the win totals, they're pretty close. So if they've got Illinois and Nebraska both at 7.5, that gives me a little bit of pause. A lot of it is also, and I know it's a different coach, so I'm giving a little bit of hesitation here. Illinois really doesn't do well with success. They really struggle as a program historically being good back-to-back years. I think I read you the stat.
Yeah.
They've made back-to-back bowl games one time since 1992. That was under Ron Zook. I believe they went 7-6 each year. So not really spectacular results there. It's a really challenging thing for me to say, hey, they're all of a sudden going to overcome that. That's who they've been for 30 plus years. So that's part of it. The other part of it is I do wonder if they're the hunted instead of the hunter. That changes things a little bit in terms of how teams prepare.
You do realize, though, with Illinois, that's the last team you have to extrapolate with.
Yes, they've got
18
the most
starters.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most coming back.
No major coaching changes.
Nope.
Nothing to like. They're the most known. Now, that probably is a positive for them, but there are times if everybody else got a little bit better, then staying pat doesn't help you necessarily, right? So that's a thing that I have in the back of my head as well. But I really do think a lot of it for me is just it's a different dynamic when you can't sneak up on anybody.
Okay.
I think Illinois snuck up on some
does
teams
it
last year.
Does it change your opinion knowing that Washington has over 50% of their production coming back? First of all, does that number seem high or low to you?
I would say I would have guessed no, that's about right.
Okay.
I think, because Williams didn't have the huge sample size, so I wouldn't expect his production to be a huge part of that.
How about Indiana bringing back? Now, they did hit the portal hard again, but they do have 60% of their production coming back.
And Coleman and Boston are back for Washington too, right? Yeah. So those are pretty
really good running back.
Yeah, and Boston's a really good receiver for them as well. So 50% seems about right.
Okay, what about 60 for Indiana?
I would have guessed that's a little high considering you're losing Rourke. Like that seems high to me. With losing your starting quarterback who was really good last year.
And then obviously Illinois.
Whatever.
Okay.
80, 90%, whatever that number is.
80.
So yeah.
You lost
Bryant and then you lost McCray in the portal to Georgia, I think. So, but those are really the only two guys. And they had sort of a stable of running backs there. But Bryant, I do think matters a lot. Like Bryant was really good for them last year. Like that, I think is a.
Well, let's start with Illinois' record or their schedule.
Okay.
Okay. You got Western Illinois coming off a 4-8 season. Win?
Yes.
Okay. Duke. Tricky.
Duke is tricky.
Coming off a 9-3 season. And Duke likes their quarterback spot.
Yeah, because they got Mensah over from Tulane.
Yep.
So, I mean, that to me is a real coin flip. Like I think that's like a true. I think that could go either way. I don't have a good feel on that one and who's going to win that.
Okay, so
it's at Duke. Let's call it a loss. If I call it a true 50-50.
Really? Okay. Listen, not shocked, and you don't have to predict it now. I'm just a mental run through.
Yeah, I'm trying to just break.
Okay, Western Michigan, coming off a 6-6 season.
I think that's a win.
Okay, Indiana.
So I think we're looking at another real 50-50 game.
It's in Bloomington,
so I'm probably gonna go a loss there again.
Okay. Purdue.
We're skipping USC.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, USC. It's at home.
Again, I'm going to go win there since it's at home. So
okay,
that's 3-2.
You're on the road to West Lafayette.
I'm going to take a win there.
You're at home to the Ohio State.
That's a loss. That puts me at 4-3, I believe.
And this might have a lot to do with how you feel about them. They go to Seattle.
So I'm going to take them over Seattle or over Washington. I'm not as high on Washington as you are.
Okay. Interesting.
So that puts me at 5-3.
At the house against Rutgers.
That's a win.
At home against Maryland.
Win.
Now, this next team I've talked about off air a ton.
This one's weird.
I just said this again when I had to go and I was going to say chew on some grass, but I'm not using chew. I'm not using any of that. I had to go touch some grass.
Yeah.
I think Wisconsin is one of these weird teams that no one talks about, except for how soon will their coach be fired.
Yeah.
They're a total afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody talks about Wisconsin. Right?
That's an easy trip-up game.
And it's at Camp Randall.
At this point in the schedule, at Camp Randall for them, that's an easy trip-up
late
game.
In November.
I'm going to call it a win, but That's a game I'd be worried about.
Then you get Northwestern at home.
And I'm going to call that a win.
So it seems like.
So that's 9-3.
And you get a couple of gimmies.
Yeah.
It seems like the win total is not that far off.
I mean,
but you got them beaten. You took some leaps.
They very easily could lose to SC.
They could easily lose 2 of those games.
They could easily lose at least 2. They could easily lose at Washington, against SC at home. I think at Wisconsin's tricky. So if I even go 2 of those, all of a sudden it's 7 wins. If I go 1 of those, it's 8 wins. So the 7.5 feels about right.
It feels right.
So yeah, so I don't think they're going to be bad, but I do think it might be 7 or 8 rather than 9 or 10.
Do they have the best quarterback, in your opinion, of the 3 teams we're going to talk about?
Ooh,
I know
that's
you
tough.
took the deep dive.
That's tough.
You spent most of your time watching Mendoza, right?
Yeah, I felt like I knew Altmaier in Illinois, so I didn't take a ton of time.
And
Damon
D. Wills is
small sample size.
Yeah, you didn't have to watch a ton,
but I didn't have a ton to watch.
That's what. Yeah.
I
mean, 2.5 games probably.
Yeah, and so I watched a decent amount of Williams, but I don't feel like I have enough there to extrapolate and feel really good about it. I will say out of those 3, I'll take Altmaier because it's the most known, and I feel really good about his comfortability in the system. And I was higher on him last year than most people. I was like, hey, Altmaier's actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So I will take Altmaier, but there's definitely a world in which he's third out of those 3. If Mendoza and Williams are who we think they can be, he could be third in that group. That doesn't mean bad, but those other 2 guys could be really good.
All right, so let's take Indiana next because they have an 8.5 projected win total.
I think that one's high.
It seems
that one seems high.
I
think they should be 7.5 with everybody else.
But let's get into it.
But I would say let's get into the deep dive of the schedule because I looked way more rosters than I did schedule.
All right, so we had the Fighting Nick Boss.
Kansas?
No. Old Dominion. It's gonna always be funny.
Always till the day I die. I'm gonna call it a win at They're non-cons.
It is trash.
It's embarrassing.
So just keep that in mind.
Like Signetti should be embarrassed by this.
Listen,
you're not a James Madison anymore. These aren't real teams.
Before we trash Signetti, what's his incentive?
To play good games.
He was rewarded a year ago.
He was, yeah.
What's his incentive?
I don't know that they'll do it twice. Also, he was rewarded a year ago because he only lost 1 game. If he loses 2 games, he doesn't make it.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So we like the Fighting Nick Boss.
Yeah, we can just go 3-0 on the non-con. I'm fine with that.
So it's Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State.
Yeah, it's total trash.
Now they get Indiana at home, and you called that?
I called that a win for Indiana.
Okay. Then they're on the road at Iowa.
I'm going to call that a loss.
Okay.
I think I'm going to call that a loss.
You just haven't given me I don't get a feel that you have a ton of respect for Iowa. I do, of course.
I have
as the Iowa.
We haven't talked about Iowa that much.
I know. So when we do
I don't feel like I've been disrespectful.
When we do actually who Nebraska plays, they're going to be one of the 3.
Yeah.
Because to pick 3 games for Nebraska was hard.
Yeah.
Because of they have some crucial 3-game stretches.
Yeah.
But I think I got the right 3 when we get to Nebraska.
Okay. I'm going to say that's a loss for Indiana.
Okay.
At Iowa City, yeah.
At Oregon.
That's a loss.
So already we've got
4
2 L's.
Yeah, we're 4-2.
Okay. They get Michigan State at the house.
That's a win.
You big Chillis guy?
I'm more of a Jonathan Smith guy.
I am too. But it's on, Michigan State's got to come there.
Yeah.
You get UCLA at home.
I really don't know what to do with UCLA.
So I wanted to make them one of the 3. I don't know if I will, though.
I really don't know what to do with UCLA.
Do you guys want us to go through UCLA? There's so many interesting
I think
teams.
they're fascinating. I think UCLA is fascinating. I mean, we'll go through all of Nebraska's schedule at some point, right?
Yeah.
So,
but for the sake of this exercise, I have to pick 3 teams that I think Nebraska has to jump.
Has to pass, yeah. Because you can't go, like Penn State's already ahead of them, so you don't have to worry about
that. Doing that.
But you can do, like, are you doing Minnesota?
So
are
here's
you doing UCLA?
so
you
want
USC?
you want the ones that are on the table?
Yeah.
Iowa, UCLA, Minnesota, USC.
Yeah. I think Minnesota's the least interesting of that group.
Why are you sleeping on?
I-
I'm not going to get distracted.
I think they're the least interesting of that group.
I think
But
you're crazy.
I don't know what to
Hey,
do.
you're going to rue. How can you be dismissive? I got to say this.
I don't feel like I'm being dismissive.
Of a team that's beat Nebraska 5 times in a row.
Just because I don't think they're interesting doesn't mean I don't think they can beat Nebraska. I don't think they're terribly interesting because, like,
you have to win that game.
Absolutely, you do. You have to win that game. That's why I don't think it's that interesting because, like, you can lose to UCLA, USC, or Penn State and Iowa, and you can sort of always understand Iowa less so.
I don't think you can. You can't lose to Iowa.
Not if you are who you want to be, but people,
especially at home, you got to stop doing that.
People will understand those losses more so than Minnesota.
Won't. No, they won't.
I don't know. I think Minnesota is not interesting because it's like Nebraska has to win that game.
Can I just say this? You think Nebraska will be Nebraska fans will be more understanding to go to Minneapolis and not win than they will losing to Iowa at home the last game on Black Friday?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
Probably not.
I wanted to give you a chance to go back.
Probably not.
Okay.
I think in general, Nebraska fans view Iowa as a better program than Minnesota. That's more what I meant.
Okay. That's fine.
Not the individual.
I'm not going to hold you.
Yeah, not the individual game so much as I think Nebraska fans think Iowa's a better program.
Okay. So they go on the road to Maryland. And you already have them with 2 losses.
Yeah, I think they beat Maryland.
They go to Happy Valley.
That's a loss.
Okay, so there's 3.
Yeah.
They get Wisconsin back home.
I'm going to call it a win since it's at home.
No time off. So they're going November 8th to Happy Valley, right back home to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm going to call it a win since it's at home.
Okay, and then at Purdue.
Yeah, so I've got them a win, so that's 9-3.
Okay.
But, again, I've got UCLA and Michigan State as real toss-ups.
But they don't seem like they should be toss-up games.
Only if you think Indiana is who they were last year, and I don't.
But they're both at home.
That's fine. People lose home games.
Yeah, but there's nothing to go on that says either one of those teams should get the benefit of the doubt.
I mean, UCLA, the way they played last year was a tough team.
Yeah, but Indiana, were kicking people's asses.
I understand that. I don't think that's who they really are long term. That's who they were last year, and that's great.
Okay, let's get back to this Mendoza thing that you went down the Bugs Bunny. Was he better or worse than you thought? Or did you have a hard time with the competition?
I had a hard time with the competition. A lot of the stuff I was watching was...
Well, how'd you view Cal?
I like Justin Wilcox.
Me too, even though this is probably his last year.
So that's kind of the context I was viewing it in. I go, okay, is Cignetti and new offensive coordinator better than Wilcox in Cal? I did like seeing Isaiah Hunter out there a little bit. That made me feel good.
Hey.
That dude can play. That dude can play.
Listen,
I feel like we kind of forget about him.
What I tell you?
Like, you got
we hop on the dang key train, and rightfully so. That dude was open a ton this offseason.
Yeah.
Man, listen.
I think Isaiah Hunter is really good.
And he's about that life.
Yeah. So
ask those DBs.
I think Mendoza can be.
They'll end up fighting that dude in one of these practices.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You can't be spinning the ball in people's faces. You can't. You cannot spin a ball off a dude's chest after you cook him at the pylon.
So the thing I had the most trouble with was actually Rourke's jump.
Can I say something about him?
Yeah.
If you watched him play on a torn ACL, he would scramble and get a first down, and I would literally be like, how?
Yeah.
He doesn't look good, doesn't throw a great ball. He was eerily accurate.
Yeah.
Some of those 50-50 balls that Surratt and those guys were coming down with, I was like, damn.
And that's a little bit what I wonder about with Mendoza. Like,
so why can't Cignetti do that with Mendoza?
Well, so that's the thing.
Because Mendoza's and I've told you this.
He's better talent.
He's the better talent.
The thing I had a hard time with is like, okay, Rourke was really old.
Yeah, like just his cool, like he
super
was
experienced,
he's cool.
super cool. Like,
well, Mendoza's a 3rd-year guy.
Yeah, but Rourke was a 6th-year guy.
No,
you know what I mean. So like, there's
where's the
talent level is definitely higher for Mendoza.
Yeah.
That's no question. I don't know if the accuracy is better for Mendoza, and I do think that was a huge part of Rourke's success. I don't like we say system quarterback disparagingly, but I think his particular skill set within that system was really advantageous. And so Mendoza's a little different. I think he's got the better overall arm talent, but I don't know if he specifically skill set wise fits in to make some of those throws as consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the thing that killed, like, it seemed like Rourke made every single throw he had to make.
Can Nebraska, let me go back to because I got to ask this question with Indiana too. Based on Illinois' schedule and where you think they'll finish, can Nebraska jump Illinois?
Yes.
Okay. So, based on where we're at with Indiana, can Nebraska jump Indiana?
I think yes, but
how?
Okay.
And I'm not disagreeing. No. You just have to put it to the numbers.
No, I know. So here's the thing. I gave them a 9-3, but if either one of those games, either Michigan State or UCLA, goes the other way, all of a sudden it's very doable.
Okay, so you have to remember this with Nebraska's schedule because to be in the ballpark of the discussion, you're putting Nebraska minimum at 8.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I'm not disagreeing or agreeing. I'm just saying, like, you have to explain the methodology. Because if you're gonna,
I think
we always talk about where we want Nebraska to be in the Big Ten, but you have to have the conversation. Who are you getting by?
Yeah, I think 8 or 9 is very much in the discussion I'm talking about for Nebraska.
As this mumbled mess, which is why we're doing this exercise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there is a huge amount of teams that I think can be in that range.
Okay. Let's go to Washington.
Okay.
Now, I get the pushback. The low-hanging fruit is, man, DB, you're way higher on Washington than I am.
Which I think is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let's go through this, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Okay? You start at home against Colorado State.
Okay.
You like the Huskies?
Yes.
Okay. You get UC Davis at home.
Win.
Okay. You get a Washington State team that is replacing a guy you didn't like, but you will have a new signal caller in Pullman.
Yeah.
It is still the Apple Cup, but it's early.
Yeah.
It's early.
We'll mark that as one of my 50-50s. We'll call it a win for now.
Okay. You then get the Ohio State in Seattle.
That's a loss.
Okay. You go to Maryland.
I think that's actually a tricky game for them.
Could be, but I don't know how you feel about Maryland.
I don't think they're great. I do think just logistically.
They have a lot to replace.
But I do think Washington logistically coming off of a really big game and then going cross country, I do think is challenging. We're going to call
and there is no bye in between.
There's no bye. It's Saturday to Saturday. You get Ohio State. You're going to get ramped up for that one, and then you go all the way across country against Maryland. Especially if that's like a close loss to Ohio State, emotionally that might be a tough spot to be in. I'm going to call it a win, but I'm keeping an eye on it.
Okay. You get Rutgers back home.
I'm going to call that a win.
I like Rutgers, but I agree with you.
At Michigan's a loss.
Huh. Okay.
I think Michigan's pretty good. I don't think they're clearly above everybody else, but I think they're pretty good.
And that's middle of October. Michigan will have had a chance to kind of settle in.
Figure out their quarterback thing. If you get Michigan, you're better off getting them early, I think.
Now you have to remember how you pegged this.
I believe that I had this as a win for Illinois.
Okay. It's in Seattle.
Yeah. I believe it's as a win for Illinois.
I vehemently had disagreed with this at first blush.
Did mark this as a game that
50-50.
was 50-50.
Okay.
So I've got them at 3 losses right now.
Are you seeing now why I question you off air about why we don't talk about this team right here at Madison?
Wisconsin? Yeah, that one's...
How many games, all 3 opponents, Wisconsin has a chance
at home
to really screw things up for any of these middle-of-the-pack teams?
Absolutely.
And
if they do...
And we do not talk about Wisconsin.
And if they do, all of a sudden, they're in the middle of the pack.
For me, they're a swing team.
A swing team.
Because you see how pivotal a role that they can play.
Yeah, schedule-wise, they're going to be
they're not on Nebraska's schedule.
Schedule-wise, they're going to be in the middle of everything.
Right?
For everybody. Yeah, a swing team's a good word for Wisconsin.
But it's why, because I know you're like, well, Nebraska doesn't play Wisconsin. I'm like, but they do have a chance to pee in a lot of people's cereal.
They really do. Like if Washington is having a year you think they could have at Wisconsin in early November, could be a problem.
Are you calling that a win?
For Washington, yes.
Okay. Apparently Washington's better than you think they are.
No, I think they got a couple losses later.
All right. Purdue at the house.
That's a win.
At UCLA.
I think that's a loss.
Right down the street.
I think that's a loss.
Okay. And then Oregon at home.
Loss. So they're 8-4 with a couple 50-50s.
That's got to be better than you think.
Well, no, I don't know. I guess I don't know how.
So how high do you think I think
well,
Washington is?
I guess that's where I was going to go. Is I
Yeah.
don't know.
Do you think most people consider Washington an 8-win team?
I think I don't know. It seemed the way you were talking about them that you were maybe a little higher on them than that.
I think that's
But
a
I
team
didn't clarify,
I
so
think
that's on me.
I think that's a team like if Nebraska's going to be the Jeffersons,
You got to be moving on up.
then somebody's got to.
So they look like a 7 or 8 win team to me, Washington, which is not a huge improvement from last year. They were 6 last year, right? 6 wins. So that's why I guess like I expect them to be a little better, but I'm not. I don't think they could vault into the top 4. Like I don't look at them as a team that could get to 4 or 5. I look at Illinois as a team that could get to 4 or 5. I even look at Indiana as a team that could get to 5, but I don't look at Washington as a team that could get into the top 4 or 5. They're sort of that next level down for me.
But we are kind of gleaning, hopefully, an appreciation for the degree of difficulty.
Yeah, these are all. I think this is a really challenging schedule for Washington because you catch Oregon, Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio State. I think of the 3 teams we talked about, that's the hardest schedule because then you still have to go at your rival Washington State. You have to go at Maryland the week after your big game against Ohio State, and you have to go at Madison the week after a big game against Illinois.
All right.
You have a bye. So you have a bye between Illinois and Wisconsin. But
so Hunter says something, and I don't know if he's getting this from me. Hunter's smart, so I assume this is his own opinion. But he says Nebraska's a 10-win team if they beat Minnesota and Iowa. Do you now understand the coincidence of why I said it has now turned into can Nebraska beat Minnesota and Iowa in the same season?
Sure.
If they do,
yeah,
look out.
Absolutely.
If they don't,
look out.
Look out.
Yeah.
And I just picked those 2 teams because of the way that the games have broken out.
And the way the schedule breaks out this year.
Over the last handful of years.
I mean, the way
so all the games matter.
Yeah, the way the schedule breaks out this year, those 2 games are crucial. Those 2 games are the difference between, again, we're making steady progress, we're heading in the right direction versus like, holy crap, let's go.
I think you're going to have to write this down for mental sake. Okay. Because if you have Washington as a potential 7-8 win team, they're squarely in the middle.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think they are.
But I don't think you went into this exercise thinking that.
I probably had them bottom middle, but definitely middle. They're not bottom of the Big Ten for sure. But I thought they were probably closer to the lower half of middle. Which at 7 they probably are, right? I mean, because we had them winning their non-con games, so 7 wins puts them bottom middle. So I think they're about where I thought they were. I think they're going to be a little better than last year, but I don't think they're going to make a leap. I think Nebraska is the team that could make a leap. I think Illinois and Indiana.
So they're not. So I think it's different.
Okay.
You know what I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Okay.
Because Lord knows you'll push back. I think what you really want to say is Illinois and Indiana will come back are more likely to come back to the pack more than. 100%. Nebraska can't take the leap.
100%, yeah. Indiana especially.
Okay, because that's what you're really saying.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I think Illinois and Indiana come back to the pack a little bit. I think Illinois is more likely because of all the retention to stay about where they were last year. So I wouldn't be shocked by another 9-3, but I don't think they're going ahead anymore.
So of the 3 so far, which one took the most mental gymnastics to arrive at the conclusion?
So probably Indiana.
Based on your answers, you went through them the quickest.
Yeah, it's because I thought about them the most ahead of time, probably.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's okay.
Indiana, I think, takes the most mental gymnastics because they do have a decent amount of returning production. I do think their transfer portal class haul was pretty good. And I do think they're more talented at quarterback. So I have to think, okay, where are they going to regress? The main place that I looked at was the defensive line. They lost 4 out of 5 contributors on that defensive line.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a real problem for them. The other thing that I look at is, okay, I didn't think the overall talent level of that roster, while it was good, wasn't spectacular last year.
Okay.
I thought it was more about coaching, at least especially in the first half of the year, sneaking up on people, and then they got confident. It kind of reminded me of the 11-2 Minnesota team from a few years back.
Yeah.
And once they kind of got past that they got past a certain point where they believe success was a self-fulfilling prophecy for them.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Where are we landing with Washington? 7 or 8 wins?
Let's call it 8.
With Indiana, where are we? 9? Take your time.
Let me double check. Here. I said, no, I think they're going to drop one of the 50-50 games, so I'm going to call it 8.
Okay. Illinois.
I think they're an 8 as well.
Okay. So safe to say all these teams aren't going to win 8 games.
Correct.
So the next, and we're going to do this for everybody. Who's most likely to be closest to 5? Is Washington closer to 5 or closer to 8?
Ooh, I would say Washington is the most likely to be closer to 5.
Is IU closer to 8 or closer to 5?
8.
Is Illinois closer to 8 or closer to 5?
I think 8.
Okay. So 2 of these 3 so far, and we got a ways to go, are closer to 8 than they are to 5.
Yes.
Of Illinois and Indiana, who's more apt to have the better record?
I think Illinois.
Okay. I'm going to, based on this exercise, I'm going to fill in what I think you think the order is.
Okay.
So you have Illinois above
Indiana.
And both Illinois and Indiana above
Washington.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. This is going to be very fun. Well, it's the best way to.
It's got to keep track of it,
and it's the best way to predict because you can't just say, "Oh man, like some other things have to happen too." Because wait, was that Corey? Yeah, Corey's spot on. Some of these teams being discussed will inevitably have to be closer to. I don't think they have to be 5-win teams.
No, but I do think there's closer to 6 versus 10.
But they can't all be 8.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Right, the numbers just aren't going to add up.
No, I understand that.
Okay. So based on this in Nebraska's schedule, I'm going to give you some say-so. I think there's 2 teams that we have to take a look at before we get to Nebraska's opponents.
Okay.
Who do you think they are? One,
teams that Nebraska doesn't play.
Yep.
Wisconsin
is one. That is number 1.
The other one would be Michigan.
Nope.
Okay.
Well, do you like Michigan?
I think they're in the discussion for top 4 or 5.
Nebraska does not play them.
Right. Yeah, I thought we were doing teams not on. Oh no, they play Michigan. Yeah, sorry.
There's 2 teams that we have to do before we get to who Nebraska can actually control the outcome against.
Who's the other one? Wisconsin and who?
Rutgers.
Oh.
But listen to me.
That's one I think you're way higher on than me.
Okay, but let's say I'm like lukewarm.
Okay.
They're on these guys' schedule.
Yeah.
So we have to take a look at Rutgers.
No, for sure. Yeah, we have to look
like
at
that's
yeah.
And again, I may be listen, I'm out here touching grass. I could be high. But I'm not as high on Rutgers as you think.
Okay. So maybe it's a Washington situation where I think
But I do think we have to do this exercise with Wisconsin and Rutgers if we truly want to get a feel.
That's totally fair.
Is that fair?
Let me just give you a heads up. I got Rutgers below Washington.
You may be surprised.
We'll continue our conversation about the Big Ten and kind of Nebraska's spot in it with all these other teams that are sort of jumbled in. That 7.5 mess is what I like to call it, even though Indiana's at 8.5.
I got to ask Big Game Hunt how old he is.
There's about 6 teams.
Dude is hilarious.
That are in that. But was it 7 teams between 6.5 and 8.5?
Yeah. So I think this is a fascinating exercise, and you're going to learn a lot because we say a lot of things.
You can't just say stuff when you're actually reconciling it.
And we'll talk about this all off season. But when you actually take the time to put it to paper,
you have to get a little specific.
Not just that, you yourself or whomever is like making these forecasts, like, oh, he's older than I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. So JR might be the pup. No, Kobe's the pup.
Yeah, Kobe's young.
Okay. So like you can't. Oh, Nebraska will do this, or such and such a team will do this. Like you
have to actually reconcile it.
So far. And this is going to be subject to change, which is why I think this is fascinating to see where we wind up at. We got Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State in the top 3. You have Illinois above, and all we know after that is so far you have Illinois above Indiana and Illinois and Indiana above Washington.
Correct.
Now we're going to slot everybody else.
Yes.
Okay, so that's and you somehow think right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't. I'll tell you later on about agreeing and disagreeing that Nebraska is going to be the fourth best team in the Big Ten.
Yes, I do. I think they're the fourth best team in the Big Ten.
But you can't make your results fit that. We have to kind of still do the methodology that we're doing now.
Right. Yeah. But I genuinely believe that Nebraska by the end of this year will be the fourth best team in the Big Ten.
Okay, so not to be Denny Downer, but you can clearly see why I asked the same three questions. Iowa, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Like
basically what I'm saying is they'll lose 2 games, maybe a third. That's what you're talking about with being the fourth best team in the Big Ten.
So the fourth best team in the Big Ten, according to this, will be closer to 9 than 8.
Yes. I think if you're less than 9, unless you have some weird thing happen in the non-con and then you went out in the –
I think it sounds like we need to brush up on our tiebreakers.
Yes, that seems reasonable. But I'm going to look at the Big Ten standings from last year and tell you what fourth place was. Fourth place was Ohio State in terms of actual
conference wins
standing. But you had a 3-loss Penn State team. You had a 2-loss Ohio State team, 2-loss Indiana, 1-loss Oregon, and then Illinois was next at 3 losses. So you probably need to be closer to 10 than 9, if we're being honest, if you're going to be fourth place. Unless we think there's a little more parity this year, and then 9's probably.
Doesn't it sound like it, though?
I think there is, yeah. Not at the top, though. At the top, we feel pretty sure about who it is, right?
Well, you're talking conference wins?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking the overall record because we're talking about 9 or 10 wins. That's
because third place in the conference was 7 wins.
Fourth place in the conference was 7 wins.
So you're not counting the tie of 2 8-1 teams?
Well, yeah, because it's first, second, third, and then fourth.
Okay, because Indiana and Penn State both won 8.
Right.
And they're both ahead of
Ohio State at 7-2.
And Ohio State's number in the conference was?
Well, they're fourth.
So fourth place had 7 conference wins.
Yeah, two losses. 7-2.
Okay. So these are teams Nebraska's got just based on a year ago in the conference, Ravi. They got to jump Michigan State, Washington, USC, Rutgers, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Illinois.
Yeah.
That's why I asked the questions. Because I don't
understand.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't think you're wrong. Like, I love this. I think you'll see I'm actually, and I played it close to the vest. Because I don't want people to think what I think.
Yeah.
Until I actually say it. Because I'm going to give you some methodology behind it. I just don't want, because I don't want to be responsible for your feelings. That's just the way I live.
Yeah. So part of the way I look at it, just for
I hate to say that. It's just
no, I get it.
I mean, I don't want to be responsible for your feelings, but I'm just saying what we're asserting. We are very. Oh man, they just got to. And I'm just telling you, if Nebraska does what some people are forecasting, because a lot of people like them, they will have done something of great significance. This will not be easy.
So there's a couple things I agree.
Yes or no?
Yes. Like
we talk real flippantly.
I mean, we know it's not easy, right? Because we haven't been there.
I don't know. Do we?
Well, we should know because we haven't been there in a decade.
Do we?
Right.
Mr. Minnesota, Iowa guy, do we?
Well, so the reason I don't try and talk about them as if I'm brushing them off. I talk about them as though those are givens that you have to win if they are who I think they are.
Yeah, but we're a lot more myopic with just by the wang that than we were being critical with this early schedule breakdown of other teams.
I mean, no, I gave everybody some benefit of the doubt there.
I mean, again, 5 in a row to Minnesota.
Yeah.
You cannot be dismissive about that.
I'm not, but it's a thing that has to happen if they are who I think they are.
Did you watch us go to East Lansing a couple years ago and lose that game?
I sure did.
Okay. Well, not that Michigan State's a play-on player, but
right. Part of what I'm doing here is two things. Number one is,
and this isn't me against you. This is
this is just how I'm processing.
And this is how a lot of this is
how I'm processing Nebraska.
And I started incrementally. This was very intentional. What did I start with? Can Nebraska make a move?
Can they beat Iowa and
the position? I was very specific.
Which one?
This started with quarterbacks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean Dylan's got to be the dude.
This started with quarterbacks. I went through all.
We talked to Runtz about it last week.
We talked to everybody. Yeah. This goes back 2 months. Hey, if Nebraska's going to be who they have to be, and there has to be a jump of significance at the quarterback spot from year 1 to year 2.
So
that's where I started.
So let's put it that way for a second. Let's go down this list, right?
Which one?
The teams Nebraska would have to jump that you just
all right. You want to start with Michigan State because they're the closest?
Yeah. So do you think,
because they won 3?
Do you think Dylan can be better than Chillis?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think he can be better than Damon Williams?
Upside, yes.
Better than Maeva?
Yes.
Better than
Caliac Manis?
Caliac Manis, yes.
Yes.
Better than Brosmer, Minnesota?
This is just. Let me back up, and then we can start again. Is this if they reach their peak or what they do for their particular offense?
I think whatever.
I do think they're different.
I think that's true.
Brosmer doesn't need to be who he needs.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to be for Minnesota who Dylan does for Nebraska.
Absolutely. I mean, who do you think is better this year of what's asked of them? Dylan's going to ask more.
Okay, that's a different question.
So who do you think is going to be better at doing what the offense is asking of them?
Okay, go again.
Chillis or Raiola?
Chillis.
Damon Williams or Dylan?
Williams.
Okay, so I've got one guy ahead of him. Maeva or Dylan?
Dylan.
Okay. Caliac Manis or Dylan?
He doesn't have to do a ton. Nebraska's O-line is good. I'm going to take Dylan.
Okay. Brosmer or Dylan?
Brosmer.
That's 2. Whatever Michigan does or Dylan? Because I assume Underwood, but I don't know.
But we'll be similar.
Yeah, I think it is going to be similar.
I'll take Dylan.
Because I think Dylan's a year ahead.
I'll take Dylan.
Right? Gronowski or Dylan?
That's tough. Iowa is going to have to be a little bit more dynamic than they have been in the past, and I understand it's relative.
You're also talking about a level jump.
He's jumping conference. I got to take Dylan.
Okay. So only 2, and then Illinois. So Altmaier.
Yeah.
So 3 guys.
And again, the question was
who's going to
relative
be better
to what they're
asking.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
And it's no coincidence that Altmaier's been in that system and Brosmer has
been in that system.
And it's a little more quarterback friendly.
Well,
than
Minnesota's not going to ask a ton.
That's what. That's that. Okay.
Now I do think Illinois asks a decent amount of Altmaier, but he's really good at running that RPO system for them.
Yeah.
So I understand those for sure. The Williams one with Washington's a little.
I know, but look at how Fish had what's his buckets in Arizona looking like
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember how to pronounce his name.
I mean, they had him looking like.
Yeah. It's also conference-wise, I think it's easier to make quarterbacks look good.
That's the hard part for me.
Yeah.
That's the hard part for me.
Because like Arizona wasn't facing Big Ten defense.
Yeah, but that was a really good team. That's the team that ended up playing Oklahoma in the bowl game.
Yeah, the kick kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That's how Jed Fish got the Washington job.
100%.
Like, I agree. I also am just very.
But you can see now, like sequentially, like where I've been going with this.
Yeah.
Whether it's our national, because I want to know how we felt about the quarterbacks ahead of time, how important the quarterbacks were. How does that relate to where you think Nebraska is going to be? Like this whole thing has been.
So let me ask.
There's been a total method to my madness.
Let me ask you this: out of Washington and Williams, Brosmer in Minnesota, and Altmaier in Illinois, would you be surprised if Dylan passed any of those 3 guys?
No.
Probably 2 more than the third.
He has the most talent.
Absolutely, but probably Williams and Brosmer more than Altmaier in Illinois. Just because we're so comfortable with what Altmaier does with Illinois.
Yeah.
So if he passed 2 of those 3, we don't even blink.
Nope.
You think they easily could be, not easily, you think they could be ahead of him because of what's asked of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you passed Williams and Brosmer, we don't even blink an eye.
But do you know how
if he passes Altmaier, we'll sit up a little bit.
I'm with you,
right?
but do you know how I built the discussion, though?
How's that?
Because we started with the quarterback play, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why are we doing this exercise with records? Because it gives a framework to the words that we're saying about the quarterback.
Yeah, for what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
So that's why when I say, I think.
Does that make sense?
100%.
But
that's when I say, okay, I think Nebraska can finish 4th. I look at, and then let's say Indiana, because they finished above Nebraska last year in 2nd.
And you don't have to be married to where Nebraska finishes, even though I know where you think they're going to finish.
Yeah, I mean, it might end up
because we still have to slot it.
It might be a little different based on schedule and how that ends up working out. But just in my head, I think, okay, I think they're the 4th best team, or certainly can be the 4th best team. But let's look at, I mean, even teams ahead of them, right?
Are we going back to 2024?
Yeah.
Okay.
So teams ahead of them that were ahead of them in 2024, but I'm going to talk about their quarterback situation this year. Raiola or Mendoza?
I don't know.
So that's really close, right?
Yeah,
I think
I like them. I think of them both in the same vein
of what's going to be asked of them and talent level,
and who they're receiving instruction from.
Sure. So I think I
think of them in a very similar light.
But it's not like Indiana's clearly still ahead of Nebraska in that regard.
I don't think there's anything clear about it.
Let's even go Oregon. Do you like more than you like?
I'm not. Everybody likes.
I'm not a more guy.
Everybody likes more than I do.
I'm not a more guy.
So
that's my point here. Is if we're gonna start with the quarterbacks, Nebraska starts pretty good.
Clearly,
right? You know what I mean?
That's why I like Nebraska.
But so that's when I say that's why I don't feel crazy when I say I think they can get to 4th.
It's not crazy. What's crazy is the amount of room they got to move, the amount of furniture they have to move in the room.
Absolutely.
That's what we're being very dismissive about.
You
have to move a significant amount of furniture.
I don't think we're being dismissive.
Who's we?
Well, me. I don't think I'm being dismissive. It's not any further than Illinois or Indiana jump last year.
Yeah. You know who would be really good at this exercise?
Who's that?
Sam. And everybody's capable, but this is how Sam thinks of it.
Sure.
Everybody.
Yeah. In terms of who you got to pass.
Yep. He thinks about it naturally. Because when you start doing this, it gets difficult in a hurry.
Because I mean, if we're starting with quarterbacks, I get Nebraska to 6 without even breathing heavy.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
I get it. Listen, preach.
And then I'm here, and I'm the guy that
so do a lot of people that rank the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. And I'm not trying to protect Dylan and saying, well, we just because we think of him this way, it should be this easy, but it's really not.
No, it's not.
What I'm saying is a lot more goes into it than just he's got to be, he got to be better than this guy, right? So, and Shafe probably said it best a handful of weeks ago when he said, all right, he was going to kind of play in this exercise. I've since expanded the whole exercise in terms of getting to the end game, but he started out with the best supposition of the bunch.
What's that?
It's Dylan against Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day.
So here's a few reasons I'm encouraged and not just saying like, oh, it's just that easy. Number one, how many deep dives did I do on those true freshman quarterback stats?
We've done some work now.
He was pretty in line with all those stats, and almost all those guys ended up being really good.
I get you.
Right? So I feel like there's historical context for him taking that jump as a sophomore. Number two, I'm listening to what the coaching staff's saying about that guy.
Hey, is this right?
Yes.
What happened?
What happened? Russell Wilson's got to go. So number one, I'm looking at historical context of true freshmen to the next year. I feel good there. I'm listening to what the coaching staff tells me about Dylan. I feel good there. I'm looking with my eyeballs about what I saw when Dana Holgorsen took over and early in the season when Dylan looked like a dude. And I feel good there. I'm looking at the overall talent and the way people feel about Dylan as an overall talent at quarterback and the context of what Nebraska's had at quarterback in the past, which is not having a first-round guy basically ever. I feel really good about that. So that's where I can sit here and feel confident about what I'm saying about Dylan and not at the same time understand that it's not easy.
Yeah.
Right? But there's a lot of things
this is going to be fascinating
that are lining up. And here's the other thing is we start with quarterback, but and I'm kind of out on an island here on this to a certain extent.
All right, Gilligan.
You know that I'm going Gilligan here on the defensive line where I think they can just be I think they can be menaces. I think that's a defensive line that can really ruin people's day. And I look at it, and I'm the only one sitting here, for the most part, talking about the defensive line that way because everybody else is worried about losing Ty, and rightfully so. They're not going to play the same way. I think they're going to be menaces.
Okay.
And so I sit here and I look at the defensive line, and I sit there and I look at Donnie Raiola on the offensive line. I go, he's going to put out another good offensive line. I can promise you that. So
we have a couple of more guests tomorrow. Do you want to do the last two non-cons before we get into, or the
non-schedule? Teams not on Nebraska's schedule?
It's just Rutgers and Wisconsin.
Yeah, we can do those tomorrow.
I think you'll be fascinated.
I'm just saying, if I'm starting with quarterback and the lines.
Because you realize both those teams.
Finishing from last year's standings?
Mm-hmm. Ahead of Nebraska.
No, Wisconsin was
Rutgers,
tied with
Rutgers
Nebraska,
was, yeah.
But Nebraska beat them head-to-head.
I'm just saying. You give me a quarterback and both sides of the line, I'm going to feel pretty good.